What's going on, guys? Firewolf Tech here, showing you guys how to build this beautiful and fire PC using the NZXT H9 Elite case on the AMD AM5 platform. This is a complete step-by-step guide, which is my longest video at about an hour and a half, which is crazy. I'll have timestamps so you can feel free to skip ahead or come back whenever you're lost. All of the components will be listed in the description box below, along with affiliate links, which does help and support my channel. But your time is also worth more to me. So thank you, and I hope this guide inspires you to start your PC build. Alright guys, here are all the components I'm going to be using for my new black build. This is going to be my first time building a PC from scratch, so please go easy on me. On the left, you'll notice my white PC build right over there. I'm going to be replicating the same thing, but an all black version. Now this is going to be a AM5 build as well, so it's going to be featuring an AMD chip. However, if you decide to go for Intel, the process is basically the same. You're just going to be swapping certain components. And to be very honest, a lot of these are optional as well. But I'm going to go ahead and go over all of the components that I have here. First thing that you're probably going to look at is what CPU you're going to be using, which is basically going to be the main brain of the computer here. Now, I recently just switched to the 7950X3D on my white PC build. So I'm reusing my Ryzen 9 7900X on this build since I switched to the X3D on the left. All right, so the next important component, especially when it comes to gaming, is going to be what graphics card you're going to run on your system. Now I decided to go for the ROG RTX 4070 Super, and in my opinion, this is one of the most gorgeous graphics cards out there. And I went with the 4070 Super so that when I'm testing out monitors, I'm mainly going to be testing out 1080p, 1440p gaming, so you guys have a better idea how this performs. Hopefully in the future, I can review more of these graphics cards for you guys. So that's going to be your next major component. The next important component is going to be the motherboard, which is basically going to tie everything all together. Now, right over here, you're going to see the Crosshair X670E. Now, I use this on my white build, so I'm going to be reusing my older motherboard here. For this video, I'm reusing my B650EF, and the B650 is going to be more of a budget-friendly motherboard. And I've been using this for a very long time now, so I highly recommend it, especially if you're looking for a budget build. But if you want more features, more USBs, more overclocking preferences, then you definitely want to go for an X670E for all of those extra features. Otherwise, this is perfectly fine, so I'm going to be using this motherboard. Next thing that you want to look for is going to be the RAM. Now, I'm going to be reusing my Team Force 64GB kit here. I actually have 4 of these on my white build. And it took me a long time to realize that in order for you to achieve the fastest clock speeds on these RAMs is by using just 2 DIMMs. When I used 4, I was stuck at a very slow 3200 megatransfers. And no matter what I did to try to overclock these to the 6000 megatransfers, my PC would never boot. You could try 4, but it's going to require a lot of trial and error and it's not guaranteed. So if you're looking for RAM, definitely consider choosing just 2 and make sure you go for the most amount of gigabytes that you're going to need. Each of these are 32 gigabytes combining for 64 gigs, so that's going to be more than enough for what I'm going to be doing. The next component is going to be important is how we're going to cool our CPU. Now I'm going to go for the black Kraken Elite 360 RGB. I'm already using it on my white build, and I'm going to be very honest with you guys, I'm very impressed with the performance of it, and I just love this screen in the middle here, which you can definitely customize and put a whole bunch of different type of images. And I just love the circular pattern of it. So I'm definitely going to go for the black version of this. Next important component is going to be your SSD. Now, if you're going to do a PC build, going for the NVMe SSD is going to be probably like your best option here. Now, this 4TB, I actually used it on my white PC build. So I'm actually going to be reusing my 990 Pro with the heatsink. Now, you can get either or. I recommend just going for the ones without the heatsink. If you want to use the one with the heatsink, you're basically not using the heatsink on the motherboard itself. And I don't mean to be misleading, but you know, I just use this for aesthetic purposes, but I'll be using the 990 Pro. Another vital component here is going to be your power supply unit. Now this is obviously going to be responsible for powering all of your components. Now I went with the NZXT C1200 Gold. 1200 watts is probably going to be overkill for this build. The only reason why I decided to go for the 1200 was because for this special connector right over here. So starting with the 40 series GPUs and above, they created this new connector that supplies even more power with just one single cable. And it makes connecting this GPU to a 40 series a lot easier and a lot cleaner because you don't have so many different PCIe cables connected to your graphics card. I mean, I kind of recommend just spending a little bit extra if you can get one with this special connector. If not, just make sure whatever PSU you're using is enough to power your whole system. I probably recommend 850 or higher. All right, next thing to consider is where the hell is all these components going to fit into, and that's going to be your PC case. There's so many options out there, but for this particular build, I'm using the NZXT H9 Elite, and in my opinion, I think this is one of the best looking PC cases. And the reason for this is because the H9 Elite has a glass panel on top. And you know, nowadays you're gonna see a lot of PC cases that have that. But what I especially like about this is that even though this has a top glass, you can still mount fans here. It'll definitely fit a 360 millimeter radiator as well. However, in this particular build, because of this top glass, I'm gonna be opting out to just put 3 fans here, and I'm gonna put the AIO on the side just so that I can see the top fans. It's mainly more for aesthetics for me personally. All right, next thing to consider is going to be the fans. Now this is going to be personal preference, but for this build I'm going to be using the Lian SL Infinity fans. Personally for me, I think these are the best looking PC case fans out there. I'm going to be using both the reverse blade and the standard edition so I can make all of the mirrors in the middle basically match each other. You're definitely going to just need one triple pack because the triple pack will have the controller. You're gonna need 6 reverse blade fans and 1 single standard one for the rear. Now this PC case does come with 4 fans. You get 3 right here and then you have 1 in the rear. So if you want to go for this aesthetics, then realistically all you need is 6 more of these RGB fans. And again, it's just personal preference. I just prefer the Lian fans. You're gonna basically see me taking these out and replacing them with the Lian fans. All right, next thing on this build, I'm going to be using the Lian Strimmer cables here. Now these are purely optional and they're just for aesthetic purposes. They're basically these little RGB cables here that I think just elevates the aesthetic build here. Another thing that I recommend is additional internal USB hubs. Most motherboards only have 2 of these, and powering all of these fans, the AIO, they all require 1 of these here. So having a multi USB hub comes in clutch for those instances. So double check how many USB headers you're gonna need. You might only need 2, maybe you need an extra one, a splitter works fine, but I find that the internal USB hub is great, especially if you ever decide to get more components in the future, you have additional ones just in case. And the very last thing here is gonna be optional as well. This is an AM5 bracket here in red. They also come in black, and I'll be showing you how to install this as well. I almost forgot about this component here. Again, another optional piece here is going to be a vertical GPU mounting kit. I do like how the graphics cards look when it's vertically mounted, so I'll be showing you exactly how to install this. I'll also show you how it looks horizontal as well. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do here is prepare our motherboard. Now, there's only 3 things that you need to do in the beginning, and that's going to be putting in your CPU, your RAM sticks, and your NVMe SSD. Now I'm going to show you exactly how to put this on, but first I'm going to show you how this original bracket works. Taking a look at your Ryzen chip here, you're going to notice a triangle on the top left, and that's basically going to be indicated with the top left triangle on the bracket itself. So you basically want to line it up here, but before we do that, we have to first lift this pin up and then lift this portion up as well. And then again, you're going to carefully line it down. You can probably put it in an angle. And once you have it sitting nice and flush, you're going to go ahead and put this down. Now you might even notice a little black cover here as well. You can also leave that on and I'll just basically pop out. But now that we have this portion down, all we have to do is put the pin underneath this, and that's pretty much it. The reason why I'm going to go with this AM5 bracket here is because you'll notice that it has all of this kind of exposed here, and this basically will make it much better. So if you ever wanted to take it out, you just push this down again, lift this up, carefully pick up the CPU here. You want to be careful with the bottom pins here. You don't want to really touch with that or anything like that. Now the secure bracket comes with an Allen screw here to remove this portion here, and they're also going to give you 4 screws. So we're just basically going to remove these 4 screws over here. All right, so now that all the screws are loose, we just basically pick up the whole frame. Now same thing, we're going to put the CPU the exact same way without the bracket because we have to put this first. Now that we have the CPU on the socket, we're going to take the AM5 bracket here and we're just going to gently line it up. All right, now that we have that on, you can see how the bracket basically covers all of these crevices here, and it kind of makes it more secured. And I just love this red color. You're not really going to see it, but I think it still looks cool. Then we're going to tighten it up. All right, now that we have it nice and tight, we have it nice and secured. All right, next thing we're gonna do here is we're going to install our RAM sticks on these RAM slots here. Now I'm no expert, but I highly recommend always referencing your motherboard booklet here, because this is going to be the most important information here, and it's always going to tell you what your motherboard recommends your RAM stick layout to be. Now it could be that every motherboard is like this, but just to be on the safe side, just always look at your motherboard booklet just to make sure. You'll notice that on these 4 slots here, they're labeled A1, A2, B1, and B2. And the recommended memory configuration, if you're running just one stick, is to put it on A2. If it's going to be 2, you want A2 and B2, and then you can put basically all 4 RAM sticks. Now these RAM sticks here have these little notches here, so you want to basically just lift this up to release the latch, I assume this is called. You're going to take your RAM stick here and you're going to line it up with the spacing in between these. And generally speaking, whenever you're installing RAM, you want to make sure that the notches match exactly the silver lining here. And another thing to point out is that these RAM sticks normally have these stickers on the back. The more aesthetic side here is going to be on the right side. The sticker normally goes on the inside here, so you don't look at the sticker. I could be completely wrong though, so make sure you're putting it the right way, because it only goes one way. So you're basically going to just line it up here. You're going to slide it down. Now that I slid down, we have to basically click them in. Easiest way for me to do it is to apply downward pressure on one side and then the next. So just going to press it down. You're gonna hear one click, and you're gonna hear another click, and you also notice that this release here basically snapped into place, and now we have that nice and secure. And we're just gonna basically repeat the same thing here. All right, now we have the RAM nicely installed. All right, next thing we're gonna do is installing our NVMe SSD. Now these NVMe SSD come in 2 different types. They come in the standard format, which is basically a very thin stick, and they also come with a heatsink as well. In your motherboard, it's just recommended to just use the stick here. However, I have this 990 Pro 2TB, and I want to use this, so you can still use it on your motherboard. So I'll show you both installation method as well. And before we get started here, I also want to recommend again to reference your motherboard booklet here, just so you know which of these NVMe sockets are going to be your best option. Now you notice that on this motherboard I have 3 sockets labeled M.2 1, 2, and 3. So 3 separate sockets, and depending on where you install your SSD on the sockets, it's definitely going to dictate the performance as well. You'll notice on my first socket right over here that this supports PCIe 5.0, and then on the second slot it supports PCIe 4.0. This is very important. If you ever get the next generation PCIe 5.0, it's important to know that only the top slot will support that. Another thing you'll notice here is that you'll see AMD Ryzen 7000 series processors, and you'll notice these 2 slots, and then at the end you notice the B650 chipset for this slot here. What that means is that these 2 slots here are directly connected to the CPU, meaning that your SSD is going to have a better performance because obviously it's connected straight to the CPU. If you go for this slot over here, it take longer to process because it's basically using the motherboard chip. So if I said anything wrong, please don't come at me. Because I'm using a 990 Pro, which is definitely one of the best that you can buy. Looking at the packaging of it, you'll notice that it says PCIe 4.0. So realistically, if I wanted to, I can basically use either this one or this one, and it should give me the same performance. If I'm trying to upgrade to PCIe 5.0 in the future, maybe I just want to put it down on this slot, so that way if I ever decide to get a PCIe 5.0, I know that the top slot uses that, and I can just use this when the time is needed, or just put it here, swap it. That's the beauty of PC building here, is that you have so many different options here. So given that I'm going to be installing the 990 Pro and I'm not going to be using the heatsink, I'm going to opt to install it right over here, just so that I can keep this ROG showing at all times. And if I ever get a PCIe 5.0, then I know that I have a free slot right over there. So all we have to do here is remove the heatsink here, usually just accompanied by 2 screws. All right, now with that heatsink out the way, we have the M.2 socket connected right over here, and you just line up these 2 over here. So I'm going to show you how to install a general one. So whenever you're installing it, you're just going to angle it and just push it in. Okay, it's going to be floating in the air. Then we're going to apply pressure downward, and this particular motherboard has an easy way to screw it in, but sometimes you might have to use a separate screw. Just follow your motherboard here, but this one has an easy latch system, so all I have to do is just basically turn this inward, and that basically has everything set. Next thing you want to do is with the heatsink here located right behind, you're going to notice this over here. This is basically a thermal pad, and you definitely want to use this, because if you don't, you're probably going to overheat your SSD and it's probably going to die, and you don't want that. So you basically just remove this plastic piece, and you can line up the screws again, and then you just screw them in, and that's pretty much it. However, since I'm going for the 990 Pro with the heatsink here, I am going to not use the motherboard heatsink, and all I'm going to use is just this here. So same thing, I'm just going to angle it in, push it in, put it down, screw it in place, and that's it. You don't really need to use this anymore because this already has a heatsink, and there's no need for this, obviously. And even if you try to put this on, it's not going to fit anyway. So again, it's completely optional. My recommendation again is just to go for the standard one. It's just that I have the one with the heatsink, and this is totally fine. The only con though is that using the original heatsink does look better and cleaner. However, since I'm using the second slot, I'm not really gonna see this SSD anyways. How to put it up here, then yes, I would still look at it. So it's basically personal preference at this point. All right, so that's pretty much it here. We have the CPU set up, the RAM, and the SSD. So now our motherboard is nice and prepped. All right, the next thing here is to install the motherboard on our PC case. And in this case, I'm going to prep the PC case as well. Now this H9 Elite is very easy to work on. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna remove the front panel. And there's a screw right over here. We just basically unscrew this portion here. So this top portion starts to come out, and then you just lift upwards, and that glass panel comes out very effortlessly. So next thing we want to remove is the top glass panel here, and you're gonna notice this little indentation over here. So we just lift it up, and it all comes out. So this is gonna be the top panel here, and then the last major piece here is going to be the back panel. And you'll notice that this back panel has so many ventilation holes as well. Just push it outward, and then you just lift this up, and now we have the whole back panel out, made out of all holes here, which is pretty cool. And on the inside, you'll notice the filter here that you could basically remove and clean out if you want to in the future. So they make it very easy to clean it out and maintain it, so I do like that a lot. And when you get the H9 Elite here, you do get this box inside, and if memory serves me correctly, I believe this is the top portion for a 240mm radiator. Alright, so let's do this. So if you want to opt for a 240mm radiator, and you want to use this bracket instead, but on the actual case itself, it already has the one to fit in a 360mm radiator, or just put in 3 120mm fans, which is what I'm going to be doing here. All right, and in the back here, we have this kind of like metal bracket here that we can actually just push out. You have 2 screws holding it in place. Once those 2 screws are out, you can basically push this out. And what I like about this too is also magnetic. So for me personally, I don't really put these 2 screws back in, because if I ever go back and need to make adjustments, I don't need to take out the screwdriver and unscrew them again. I can just basically just pop it out, which is really cool. Another feature of this is right on the doors here, you can put like the standard SSDs on this slot over here, and that's a pretty cool feature. And then you basically have all of your cable management here. Now, if you are planning to use the same fans here as you see right over here, then they actually have the lighting control already pre-installed right over here, so that makes the build so much easier. However, for me personally, I like the Lian Li fan, so I'm gonna have to remove all of these fan cables and controller, and obviously all the fans, so I'm gonna go ahead and do that as well. And further inside, I forgot what this was. Okay. Alright, so you get a whole bunch of screws here for your motherboard, some standoff as well. So this is definitely going to come in handy depending on your particular build. Alright, giving you a nice little bird's eye view here. Another thing that you can also use is this little tray over here. I believe this is going to be housing the like old style hard drives here, but you can actually just take this out And I'm pretty sure this is for the older hard drives, but since we're not going to use that, there's no need to have this at all, so we can basically just toss this aside. And the benefit of that is that now we have even more space to basically work on. We have all of this space here. We can route all of our cables here. Very effective. And then the power supply goes on top. So for me personally, this is very easy to work with. So we're going to take off this original controller here. So we're going to unplug all of these fans. But I do like the fact that the H9 Elite comes with all of this. I'm not 100% sure if the Flow comes with all of this. I want to say it does. All right, then we have some 2 screws here holding that in. All right, and now we can just take this out. Let's also take this out as well. There's all of your connectors to the motherboard. I really like this Velcro system that they have here. It just makes cable management really easy to route. And this is just another reason why I prefer the Lian fans, because you don't need all of these connectors and cables. So the Lian will definitely look a lot cleaner, especially in this back tray here. All right, now that I have all this out, I'm gonna strap these in again because I don't want to lose the management here. I'm just gonna buckle one in just to make sure that I don't lose that. All right, now that we have all the wires here, it's time to take out the other fans. All right, I'm gonna start taking off the rear fan here. All right, now that we have the 4 screws all out, we can basically start taking this fan out. And there's another loop here. There's like another metal hook here that basically hooks the cable in. I'm just gonna tuck that out. All right, now we can take the rear fan. Now the rear fan that comes in this PC case has no RGB. It's just a standard fan. So 1 fan out. And next thing we're gonna remove this side fans here. Let's go ahead and hide that chaos there. All right, another reason why I love this case here, these side fans are actually installed on the bracket that comes out. So there's 3 screws here that we have to remove. All right, now that we have the bottom screw completely removed and these 2 removed, push this top portion down and then it kind of just comes out. Now it does come out easier, but I have all these fans attached, so we're gonna route all the cables outwards. All right, and now we have the 3 fans still attached to the bracket, so I gotta take these out. But I do like the fact that you can install a lot of these fans outside of the case. It makes it a lot easier to customize. All right, now we have the bracket completely empty. All right, before we install the motherboard here, I just wanna show you exactly how this case looks like once you have everything out the way. I do wish they had this case completely empty, but again, I understand why they have all of the built-in fans and whatnot, but it's gonna be very easy to install everything else that we have to install. All right, now that we have our PC case nice and clean, it's time to install our motherboard with the RAM, CPU, and SSD. Now, you'll notice all of these standoffs here with screws. We're just basically going to line it up with the screw holes on the motherboard. And one thing to note here is that you'll notice this particular standoff is not threaded. So you wanna make sure you put the sensor of, let me locate whatever the sensor of your motherboard is, and you wanna make sure that it sits nice and comfortably. So you want to just gently push it down while at the same time keeping these ports closer to this opening here. So I like to lay it on top first, and then I kind of just want to push it a little bit as we go so I can locate where that standoff is, which is right there. So you see it kind of fell right over there. So now we have pretty much a nice secured hold already. So if I try to move it, you know, from right to left, it's not going to go anywhere. So now all I got to do is secure each of these screws here, and like I showed you earlier, you get a whole bunch of screws here. And for the motherboard, I'm pretty sure it's going to be the 632 5mm, and if it's not, then we can always try the other ones. All right, now we have all the screws installed here. I think it's a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, about 8 screws in total. So now everything is nice and locked in and secured. All right, and this is so far what we're working with right here. We have the motherboard nice and secured. Now, the next thing I want to do here is I want to rotate the case on the back here, because what I want to do here is I want to start routing the fans and kind of like installing the main controller here before I start installing all of the other PSU cables, just so I can easily cable manage it a lot easier. So you are going to need at least one triple pack of Lian fans here, because it's going to include the controller here. All right, so this is the main control box that's going to be located inside the box here. So it's going to be able to control 4 sets of fans. And right in the back here, we have some space here to attach this double-sided piece here. That's going to allow us to basically attach it on the back of the case very seamlessly. Similar to how the original NZXT controller was located right here, I'm also going to put it back there as well. And actually, before I put it on the case here, these does come with additional wires here. So on this box here, we have the USB port here. So when I first plug that in, okay, and this is going to connect inside the motherboard, or in this case, I'm going to use the NZXT Internal Hub. And then we also have this cable over here, which is going to be attached on the right side over here. And just to update you guys, this particular cable are ARGB headers, and this is going to connect straight to the motherboard as well. However, you actually don't need this, and I do end up removing this later on. This is only if you want the motherboard to be able to control the RGB on the fans. Since I'm not going to be using that, I'm going to be strictly using Lian software. You can actually just not install it and it'll be cleaner. And this is how it should look like here, so that you have everything ready. Next, I'm going to install the NZXT hub on the bottom of the case here. Let's move this up closer. And this internal hub is powered by this SATA cable. I'm pretty sure this is called SATA cable if I'm not mistaken. We're just going to connect that here. And then you know there's some protectors for the other slots here. The main one is going to be this blue one over here. This is going to be the one that's going to connect straight to the motherboard. And all of the other ones, which are black, is going to be your standard USB 2.0. So you would put that over here, and this goes to the motherboard. And they also give you that USB 2.0 cable extension as well. Basically, you would connect this like that. Okay, so now this is pretty much all set up now. And what I like about this is that on the bottom here, if I'm not mistaken, is magnetic. So once I place it, I think I want to place it more towards the right here. Yep, so it's pretty much magnetic here. So you can literally place this anywhere that you want. I think I'm just gonna lay it down on the floor here. And now we have basically we have 4 additional USB 2.0 headers here. So that just makes it easier to just connect everything there as well. And so I can start routing the cables here. This portion here, which is normally located on the top of the motherboard, I'm gonna push this cable on top over here. It's gonna push all the way there, all the way inward, so that when I put the PSU, which is on top here, it's gonna push this cable kind of inward, and that's already nicely hidden. This USB 2.0, we're gonna use the internal header here, so I'm just gonna plug that in. I'm gonna use the far right, just in case I need to use the other ones in the future. It's gonna be easier for me. All right, and since this is gonna go straight connected to the motherboard, it's going to basically cable management, so it's gonna be a little bit shorter. That way, all I need to do is just push this outwards here, and I can just easily connect it. And last controller here that I almost forgot here is going to be your Strimmer cables. And again, this is going to be completely optional, but if you're going to use the Strimmer V2s, the motherboard extension cables will come with the controller, and that's basically going to be this Lian box here. So same thing, we do have some double-sided tape here, or magnet, I'm not sure. All right, and for this, I'm going to put it down over here. So before we do that though, we're gonna first utilize this connector here that comes with the controller. All right, with the control box here, we're going to connect another USB here. So this is the reason why I needed an internal hub, because there's a lot of USBs that's gonna be used here. Finally, you do get additional cable here, and this is another ARGB 3-pin header. Now, this is gonna be completely optional. It basically goes here, and This, you want to use this if you want the motherboard to control the lighting. However, since we're going to use the L-Connect software, I'm actually personally not going to be using this one, so I'm just going to not install this. I'm just only going to focus on connecting the USB to the motherboard itself, or I'm sorry, for the internal hub. I'm going to want to put these cables facing outwards here, so maybe it's going to be easier for me to cable manage. Let's see, actually no, I'm gonna go this side here because it's gonna be easier. So I'm gonna push this more towards the bottom. We're gonna connect the additional USB. All right, so this is so far what we have here. We have the main controller for all of the Lian Li fans right over here. We have the Strimmer box on the bottom left, and then we have the NZXT Internal Hub on the bottom right. And I'm trying to do this as clean as possible, so that way when everything is put into place, it's easier to just cable manage, because it makes it easier to just connect all of these in one shot. All right, now that we have all these cables put to the side for now, I'm just gonna close this off. Let's go ahead and do the fun stuff here, and that's gonna be installing these Lian Li SL120 Infinity fans. Now, there are two types of these fans here. There are the standard ones, and then you have the reverse blade on the right. And you can kind of tell from the way the fan blades are, you can definitely tell that they're both different. Now, you could go with standard on all of them, and then whenever you use another side, you're basically looking at this side with the RGB illuminating on this little circle here. It still looks good. However, if you want to have that uniform, beautiful mirrored look on all sides of the case, then you definitely want to get yourself some reverse blades. Now, I have a total of 4 standard ones, and I'm going to have a total of 6 reverse blades. So if you want to imitate this one, 6 reverse blade, 4 standard. Now, when you get the triple kit, you're going to get 4 of these connectors here. These are the ones you're going to want to use because these connect straight to the box. When you buy the single packs, they're going to come with this type of connector that utilizes the motherboard's RGB headers. But because we have the controller, we're just basically going to ignore all of these cables that are included on the single packs. All right, so looking at the top of the case here, the H9 Elite makes it very simple to install fans. So we can actually remove this top acrylic piece here, so we can attach the fan separately and put it back in place. So first thing we got to do is remove these 2 screws on each of these sides. All right, after removing these 2 screws, we have 2 more. All right, now that that's all removed, we can just take this apart, and then when we're ready, we can just drop it back in, and I think it just makes it so much easier to install. All right, going back to the SL Infinity fans, what I love about this too is that these are daisy chainable. So since we're going to be using 3 120 millimeters, all you have to do here is kind of match the connectors here. So these little stubs here, and then you just line them up on the bottom, and then you just interlock them, and they pretty much are nice and locked. So this gives you a nice triple 120 millimeter fan layout here. Now, your biggest question is probably, why am I installing these fans on the top glass instead of the radiator? Well, I'm going to show you here with my white NZXT H9 Elite here. So I used to have the radiator on top. The problem with the radiator on top is that because this is a top glass, you're basically going to see the radiator, and that's pretty much it. And to be honest, the radiator, when you looked on top, it just looked really bad. If you have the H9 Flow though, then you know you're not going to really matter. It's not going to matter much. However, if you want to see the beautiful fans, then I recommend putting them like this. You still have airflow. Like, let me repeat myself here. There's still ventilations here. So if I put my hand here, I feel all the air being pushed out because the air is basically pushing out, and there's like a whole ton of space. I don't know if you can see that. There's still a lot of space there as well. Now, another reason why it looks better as well is that you'll notice on the side, you see the infinity mirrors right over here. Because I have the AIO also on the side, all of these mirrors are also going to show. When I had the radiator on the top, because the radiator pushes the fans more outwards, without the radiator, these will be pushed more towards on this side, so you actually didn't get to see the infinity fans. So now that I have the AIO on the side, you actually can see the infinities on the side. So for aesthetics, in my personal opinion, I think this is the best way to set it up for an H9 Elite case. That's just my personal opinion. If you want to mount it on top, you definitely can. And what I'm going to try with the black build is right here I have it I have the tubes on top, which again, it's okay to put it this way, but on this build, I'm gonna try putting the tubes on the bottom and see how that looks and see if I like it. I might even do it on this one as well. All right, now that we have that out of the way here, before I place the acrylic on top, I wanna connect the connector first because this is gonna make it a lot easier to cable manage later on. So you're just basically gonna follow the arrow. You're gonna push this up here. And then I want the cable facing on this side here because that's where all of the cables are gonna go. So if I wanna do that, I can just basically unlock this portion over here, pull this piece up, and then switch the orientation of the cable on this side here. And again, this is not necessary, but if I'm already doing this build fresh, I just want it to be, you know, aesthetically pleasing. So hopefully you guys don't mind all of this extra work. All right, now that we have the wires routing on top, it just makes it a lot easier for me to cable manage. So now we can place the acrylic on top, and we are going to mount all of the screws here. And each of these fans are gonna have a set of 4 screws. All right, now that we have all the screws in place, let's go ahead and drop in the acrylic here so everything is nice and tight. And as I'm putting this down, I'm going to start pushing the cable inwards over here so that way I can cable manage that later. So it basically just drops in just like that, very easy and simple. Then we're going to take this plastic off. Then we're going to screw these top 2 things here. And let's not forget the 2 screws that we took off earlier. All right, we got the top fans installed. You can see the nice little mirrors here. All right, next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna install the rear exhaust fan here. So we wanna make sure we see the nice little mirror here. I already attached a connector on here, and we're gonna have the cables shooting on this side. So let's go ahead and give you a closer look here. Let's see how I do this. All right, so I'm gonna keep the plastic pieces on this one in particular because you're not gonna really see the mirrored piece on the sides. So I just wanna protect it as well. We're going to route the cable on top. I'm actually gonna route this all the way on top, or should I route this on the bottom? I'm just gonna pick the top. All right, then we're just going to basically just push this in. Now, again, like I said, it's a tight fit, but just push it in and it just kind of goes in. It's kind of tight in the sense that, like, you know, you don't even need to screw this in, but you want to make sure we screw it in anyways. And I'm just gonna line up the holes here. Push this in more inward. All right, and then we're just gonna use the 4 screws. All right, now we got all the 4 screws nice and tight, and now we have our rear fan installed perfectly. And like I said, even though you see the mirror portion, once you put the glass panel, you're not really gonna see this. But yeah, now we have the rear fan here. And so far I'm trying to route all the cables and planning it out as best as I can. So that way when you work on the back, it's easier to just cable manage. And let's see here. Next thing we're gonna do here is we're gonna work on the AIO installation here. So we're gonna mount the AIO on the side. So let's go ahead and work on that. All right, here's the Kraken Elite 360. Now these do come with 3 RGB fans. However, since we're going for the Lian Li routes, we're not gonna use it. We're gonna keep everything inside the box. The most important thing that we're gonna need is the radiator itself, of course, with the pump. Since we have the AM5, we want to make sure we get the AM5 bracket and the AM5 standoffs, which are in this little bag. Also, you're going to need these 4 thumb screws to screw it in place. And you're also going to need 3 reverse blade fans. Again, so we can see the mirrors when it's basically sound mounted. So let's go ahead and install that. Now, originally I was saying that I was going to put the AIO on the bottom. Having the tubes on the bottom. However, I just tried it out, and in my case, it's not gonna work because I also have 3 fans on the bottom, and unfortunately, the tubes interfere with the bottom fan, so it's just not gonna work. I'll show you a footage of it. I had to get rid of so many screws here. I would only be able to use these 4 screws to be able to hold the AIO. It's pretty much at the highest point while touching the top fans. So as you saw in the back, I only used 4 screws because that was the only way to push the AIO as high up as possible. And the tubes were still hitting the bottom fan. So I didn't want to risk the bottom fan getting really stuck with the actual tubes. So instead I'm going to opt to put the tubes on top. Now if I had 2 140mm fans on the bottom instead of a triple fan, then that setup would definitely work. And if there's someone that actually has a triple fan on the bottom with the side tubes on the bottom, the only way that I can see that possible is if they're using only 4 screws on the back and somehow the tubes are probably not interfered at all. This build was just taking so much time and I didn't want to waste so much time either if I found out at the end I couldn't put the tubes in the right place. So I'm just going to opt for the top. Instead, I'm going to just do it the original way that I did it before, is having the AIO pump on the top, which again is perfectly fine as well. And we're going to make sure we have the connector on this side over here with the cable pointing upwards, just like this. And all we have to do here is screw them in with these very long screws, with this very long screw and the washer as well. And before you install the bracket, just make sure that you notice where the 2 top screws are located and the bottom screw. Top screws, we're going to leave the AIO pump on the top, where the wire is going to be on the bottoms. All right, now we have all the screws installed. Now we're ready to put it on the case. All right, looking at the back of the case here, we're going to be installing the side portion on this side. So we're going to take our bracket, and what we're going to do here is we want to push the AIO on the inside. And as we're moving inward, we're going to take the bottom cable, which is for the Lian fans, and we're going to feed it on one of these little holes here. I'm going to grab that and I'm just going to pull it through. Then we're going to push the side panel inside. And what helps is to kind of angle it from the bottom first, and then everything should sit perfectly fine after that. All right, and then we're just going to screw these 2 screws here. Then we're going to take our bottom screw and we're going to lock in the bottom portion as well. And we have it nice and secured, and you'll see that you have a ton of space to put more fans on the back if you're doing a push-pull configuration. All right, here's how we're looking so far with the side fans already installed. So far it looks so good, and you'll see that with the AIO, all we have to do really is just find a nice positioning. Now real quick, you'll notice that on the actual pump itself, it automatically comes with thermal paste here. So that's one of the good things about the Kraken Elite, is that once you take this out, you don't have to worry about any type of thermal paste. All right, laying the PC case flat, it's gonna make it a lot easier here. So in order to install the AM5 bracket, which is this right over here, we're gonna have to remove these 2 brackets that are installed on the motherboard itself. And then looking at the provided standoffs here, you want to make sure that for the AM5 we have the ridges facing upwards. If it's AM4, we have it on the bottom. And I'm going to place this here with the thicker end of the screw on the bottom, the thinner on top. And then we're just basically going to push this in and we're going to screw it in. All right, now we got all of the AM5 standoffs installed. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to grab the AIO pump. Let's go ahead and remove this. And this bracket is, I believe it's for Intel. So we have to switch it for the AM5 bracket. So for that, we just twist this to the left, and that should come out very easily. Then we're going to take the AM5 bracket and we're going to tighten it up like that. And like I said again, this already comes with NZXT high thermal paste. Now, if you don't want to use this, you can go ahead and wipe it off and apply thermal paste right on top of here. However, I'm going to just keep it nice and simple and just using the one that's already installed on the AIO. And then for this, I'm going to keep the tubes on the bottom. Then we're going to place it right on top, nice and gentle. And before we lock it in place, I'm going to move the tubes upwards so I can have access to this bottom right screw, because this one could be a little bit tricky. You're gonna take the additional thumb screws here, and then you're going to basically screw those in. I want to make sure that's nice and tight so there's great contact between that. And that's pretty much it here. Now we have the AIO fully installed. We're also going to have the connector here. Now we're going to connect this, and this will also go to the motherboard as well. And then this portion over here on the other end is going to go behind the case. We have the SATA power and a USB 2.0 connection that's going to connect to the motherboard. And we have 3 headers here. These are for the fans, but we're not going to be using this at all. So I zip tied this. This is going to be the only zip tie I'm going to use in this whole video. So let's go ahead and connect it. First, we're going to run the wires right behind because we don't want to see these. All right, we have a nice solid connection here, and now we're ready to move on to the next step. Now, after installing the AIO pump, I want to move on to installing the bottom fans. Now, if you have the NZXT vertical mounting kit, it's going to come with this piece right over here to support the mounts. And since I already have this open, I'm going to go ahead and install this first, because if I put the fans, I'm going to have to take them off again. So first thing first, on the bottom of this case, you're going to have this little filter thing here. Comes out very easily. You're gonna take this bracket piece that's inside the box of the mounting kit, and you're just basically going to kind of just angle this inward. So you'll notice 2 holes right over here. So you just kind of angle it inward and it goes in just like this. It does come with screws here, so you're gonna use these screws to screw that in place. And before I screw those 2 screws in, there's more screws over here on the bottom. There's 2 holes here. I'm gonna screw this in first, so that way it's easier for me to screw the other 2. And again, if you don't have the vertical mounting kit, then you can completely skip this step. Or maybe you might have an aftermarket vertical mount kit that doesn't require these screws, then feel free to skip ahead. All right, I got these 2 screws here. Now it's more solid, but we're gonna finish it off with these 2 screws. Now we got that support beam installed, and now we can move forward to installing the bottom case fans. All right, now it's time to apply the bottom fans. Now I'm running the reverse blade infinity fans again, so we can see the mirrors on the top. You want to also have the cable on the left side, of course, firing at this angle at this side here, so you can basically cable manage easier. We're going to go ahead and start applying it. So this is going to be the only set of case fans that don't have like a removable tray. But I'm just going to route the cable on the bottom here. All right, once I have all that cable pushed inward, I'm gonna lay this down over here. All right, and then you also wanna pay attention how forward or backward you want the fans to be. And for me personally, I'm probably gonna put it maybe somewhere in the middle. All right, and using the included screws in the Lian packs, you're gonna use this to screw it in. What I like to do here is I like to just grab it on one hand and screw in one of the sides here, just enough so you can hold it a little bit, and then I can quickly go to the other corner side. All right, just with these 2 screws, and just makes it easier for me to install the rest of it. All right, we got the fans all screwed in. Let's go ahead and apply this filter here. All right, so whenever you need to clean that, you just easily just lift this up. So I like that feature a lot. All right, let's go ahead and lift this up and see how it's looking so far. This is getting a little bit heavier. All right, so far it looks amazing. And this is why it was important to install this vertical mount support beam here, because obviously the fans are going to be in the way. And now it's time to cable manage everything on the back, which is going to be the scariest part. All right, here is the back of the case. This is how we're looking so far. So let's go ahead and start cable managing and connecting the Lian fans on this connector here. And so we have 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right, so for these cables, I'm going to route it from here to the bottom here. So basically go one by one here. Let's get a little close up here. Next, we're gonna use these top two connectors here. All right, this one's a little bit of a struggle here. All right, so I got the two top fans routed over here. We can always push that later when we're gonna finish. And then I'm gonna grab this bottom one over here. We're gonna connect this right on the bottom. And since there's gonna be an excess of cables here, I'm just going to tie this up. Then we're gonna take the last set of fans and we're gonna connect this on top of here. Okay, just gonna tuck this in on the corner over here so it's nice and clean. And next thing, I'm gonna push this NZXT motherboard connector right on top of one of these holes here, so we connect to the motherboard. AIO pump connectors here. So this side is going to connect to the motherboard, and this is going to have the SATA cable. So I'm going to route this on this side over here. All right, now we have this nice and routed down, and we're definitely going to use another USB header. However, since this controls the AIO, instead of connecting it to the internal hub, I'm just going to pass this on top so I can connect this straight to the motherboard, since I'll have two. And this portion is going to go on the CPU side, so we're going to throw this cable back in. And all of these connectors that you see here, this is going to be plugged into the power supply unit. I'll show you that pretty soon. All right, next step here is to set up our power supply unit. And again, I'm going with the NZXT C1200. What I like about this again is that it has this special connector right over here. This is going to be the next generation of latest graphics card, so this is definitely going to be compatible for the 40 series. And it comes in this really nice bag here that houses all of your power supply cables. Now, it's very important to note that these cables are meant to be used for this power supply unit, so try your best not to lose these cables, because you never know if you need them in the future. Give us the 4 screws to attach on the back of the PC case. And it comes with a whole bunch of cables. Now, obviously, we're not going to be using all of these here, but they give us a good amount of cables. All right, the first one is going to be the motherboard cable, and it's going to be listed right on top of here, which lets us know that the motherboard is 20+4, and this is going to be 20+4 right over here, and this goes to the actual motherboard. And I like the quality of these cables. It already automatically comes with this nice little black sleeve, so that looks pretty nice. Definitely kind of hard to push in, we'll say that. But we have the motherboard in. Next we're going to use is this 600 watt cable, and this is the one that I'm referring to. This is going to be used to power the 40 series graphics card with just this one cable. And it looks like it doesn't matter which side I'm using in. So I'm just going to connect this portion right over here. Next is going to be the CPU cable, and you'll see that they have them labeled on the left side. Now, since this is labeled CPU, I am going to assume that this goes directly inside the actual slot here. All right, and finally, we're going to connect our peripherals here. These are the SATA power cables here. Now, depending on how many of these you have inside your PC case, just make sure you count each one, and you basically plug as many as you need. All right, so I counted 4 so far, but that's not even counting the AIO pump, which I know is going to use one of them. So I'm going to do this cable here that automatically includes 4 connectors here. And I'm also going to attach this one that has 2 connectors here for a total of 6. And this basically gets connected to where it says peripheral and SATA. So I'm going to use the left portions. I'm just going to connect this one maybe in the middle here, just to see if we can have some extra space. I am going to take the motherboard cable and the GPU cable, and I'm actually going to tighten these up. And that's because we're going to be using these Strimmer cables, and these are extension cables already, so I don't want these cables to be, you know, have a lot of length on them. So I'm just going to use these little Velcro wraps here just so I can just make them more tucked in. Now, if you weren't going to use Strimmer cables, then this will connect straight to the motherboard. So you won't have to be doing this step here, but I'm just doing it, of course, for the sake of cable management. All right, now when you're putting the power supply, you want the fan facing on the vent side of the PC case. So it's going to be like this, and it's going to lay right on top here. And we're going to use the included screws, and we're going to screw the power supply on the case. All right, now we have the power supply installed, and the last step here is to connect everything here to the power supply, and then we'll leave the final connections to the motherboard. The other connectors are going to be easy. Actually, you know what? To start off, since we know where the CPU is going to be located on the top, we're just going to run this wire on top because we don't need all this length here, because this power supply is sits very close to the CPU, so we can just shorten this cable here. Push this down. All right, now that we have the CPU out the way, we have the GPU and the motherboard here. We're gonna just leave this here, and we're gonna work on the SATA cables here. So let's see how many we have. All right, so we have 4 here, and then we have 1 for the AIO pump, and I think that's pretty much it here. So because I have these 4 already on this side, I'm gonna use the one with the 4 SATA connectors, and we're just gonna connect each one. And this is gonna power the Strimmer cables. This is gonna power the NZXT Internal Hub. This one is gonna power the Lian control fans here. And it looks like it needs 2 of these. It sucks a lot of power. All right, so we have 4 of these. Now we're going to tie them up. All right, so I'm gonna tie this whole section up, and I'm gonna start tucking it in. Let me push it to the bottom. All right, and then for this connector, we're gonna just use one of these. So we have a free one, but since we're not gonna use it, I am going to Velcro strap this so it's not dangling everywhere. All right, we got that nice and wrapped up, and same thing, I am going to just push this underneath here. All right, so this is pretty much how we're looking so far. I know it looks very chaotic here. However, I think it looks pretty decent. Again, I'm no master at cable management, but this is as much as I can go. All right, next thing we have are all of these connectors from the PC case, and we're going to kind of route it out. There's a bottom hole here. We're just gonna push these cables on top. Front panel AC audio is definitely gonna be on the bottom, so we're going to start pushing it from the bottom. And then these 2 cables are, I believe, connect more towards here. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna let go of this connector here. All right, we're gonna start passing this cable right over here, and same thing over here, because I think this one is on the middle somewhere. Finally, let's work on the Strimmer cables. So these are basically extension cables. So we're going to connect this portion where one of the connectors is at, and we're actually gonna, I should have actually connected this first, so sorry about that, guys. We're gonna need to access this control box here. Gonna take the connector out here, and we're going to use, since we're using the one with the 600 watt, we're gonna use this one. And there is a switch here indicating which one you're gonna have. So I'm using the right side again because I'm using the special 40 series cable. And then finally we have the motherboard, which is going to connect on the top of this controller. All right, now we can push this back in. Now I'm going to start with the motherboard extension first. So it's going to be this one over here, and the motherboard cable is going to connect on this side. Just want to push that in. Definitely very tight to connect it. Now we have the Strimmer extension cable, and now this, I need to open this up again. This is gonna go inward with the RGB tubes on this side. We're just gonna push this in. Actually, before I route it over here, I completely forgot. It's really hard to tell, but right over here we have like a glass panel here that's blocking this portion of the case, and I'm actually going to remove this. I wish I would have remembered that, but here we are. All right, so this is the piece that I'm referring to, and this basically blocks the opening of the NZXT signature bar. I'll call it a bridge. The reason why I'm removing this is so that I can move the Strimmer cables outside of the bridge, so I can wrap it around so you can see all the RGBs. Because with this on, you would have to route the Strimmer cables underneath, and had it not been for the Strimmer cables, if you were just gonna go for just a basic motherboard cable, then it will look really nice because you're hiding the motherboard cable. However, since we have the Strimmer cables and we actually want to show it, I like to remove this piece so that obviously we can see it. Another reason too is that I like to also route the Strimmer cables from the GPU side outside of the bridge as well, so that the GPU cable sits on top. And the only other way to really do that is to also remove this piece here. And this piece would be a lot easier to remove from the beginning. So I really apologize. I'm going to try to fit this segment in from the beginning. So hopefully I have it there as well. So I can make you guys aware, so that way, you know, once you reach this point, it's a lot easier. Now just remove these top two screws, but this one's going to be a really pain in the butt to remove. I'm going to remove it from the other side. All right, this glass panel should come out now. All right, so just removed it. Completely forgot about this. I removed this so that I can easily pass this motherboard cable over the hump here. So you'll see here, I'm just gonna pass it through. And we're also gonna route the GPU cable. All right, we're gonna connect the GPU cable over here. Same thing, I'm gonna go over the top. All right, so now we have the Strimmer cables in the fronts, and everything seems to be connected. So we should be able to close this door. So hopefully that looks a lot better here. Obviously when we open this up, it looks crazy, but we're just gonna leave it like that. All right, so this is the front now. We have both Strimmer cables up front. And all we have to do now is connect everything straight to the motherboard here. All right, let's go ahead and connect all of the cables here. Let's go ahead and start with the bottom here. We have two USBs. So we have the USBs located on the bottom right here. So I'm gonna move these two cables. Okay, this should have been the AIO. And then we have the NZXT header here, but I'm gonna push this on the other side. All right, so we got the AIO and we have the external hub both connected on the motherboard. Next thing we're gonna connect is a front panel connector. And what I like about this case is that it has everything all in one. Next thing we're gonna connect is the audio, and that's gonna be on the left over here on my motherboard. So I'm gonna have to move this cable back down. And I'm gonna have to flip the case again so I can move the cable on this side. All right, so I just moved the cable. All right, we're gonna move these AIO tubes here, and then we're gonna connect the USB 3.2, I believe, or 3.1. That's gonna go right over here. And this cable is gonna actually control the USB Type-C. All right, and next thing we're gonna move is grabbing the AIO pump. We're gonna locate this over here. This is gonna be for the AIO pump. And we're gonna connect it labeled AIO pump, of course. Next thing we have the CPU power cable here. And we're gonna connect that right over there. Now you're gonna notice there's gonna be 8 pins and then plus a 4. Using just 8 pin is perfectly fine. It's going to be more than enough to power it on. The additional one is probably for more power. I think that's used for like overclocking and whatnot. All right, CPU is in. Next thing we're going to move is the motherboard cable. Now this GPU cable, I'm going to extend it a little bit more, position it here, and we're going to take the motherboard. All right, so I basically moved the GPU Strimmer cable on the bottom, and then I want the motherboard on top. And what I wanted to do here with this motherboard cable is going to attach right over here is I'm going to use a loop. I'm going to basically use it to cover a portion of this AIO loop, just like that. Kind of creates a nice little arc here, and it kind of like goes over the tubes, and I think it looks pretty nice. Again, you can play around with how you want these streamer cables to look. It's all personal preference at this point. And the last thing we need to do here is, all right, and all cables looks like they're all connected where they're supposed to be connected. The final thing we're gonna do here is the fun part, which is gonna be the GPU. All right, guys, I just had a super long break right now. It is now nighttime here, and now I'm ready to finally complete this build here. So far, we moved the motherboard streamer cable upwards and moved the streamer cables for the GPU more on the bottom so I could, you know, move the cables that way. Now, the last step here is to connect our GPU, and we're gonna be using the 4070 Super here in black. And guys, this looks so freaking good. I mean, let me know in this comment section below. I think this is one of the most beautiful graphics card that they make. This is the ROG RTX version. So there's going to be two methods of installing the graphics card. We can do it horizontally, or we can use the vertical GPU mounted kit that you saw me install the support bracket first. So first thing, since we already have this laid out here, I'm going to show you how this is going to look horizontally, which is basically going to look like this. And the first thing you want to do basically here is the graphics card is going to be connected on this lane right on top here. By default, all of these on the left side are basically blocked. So these are the PCIe slots. These are all the PCIe covers here. So to basically connect this, you're going to have to remove probably the top 3, or maybe just the top 2. I kind of forget. Now, since I'm going to be vertically mounting it, I'm gonna have to remove all of these anyway, so I'm gonna just remove them all. And again, if you have them all open, it doesn't really matter. It's just preference here, but I'm gonna open all of these up because I'm going to be vertically mounting it as well. But we're gonna see how it looks like horizontally. All right, so I have the top 2 open here. Let's just see if it works from here. So whenever you put the graphics card in, make sure you take off the sleeve if it already has it. If not, then you can continue. It should be open like this. You want to make sure, obviously, you see the little silver line here. Obviously, this portion is going to go in, and then the right side is going to be the longer side. So we're going to move these. We're going to move the streamer cable aside, and what we're going to do basically here is we're going to start lining it up here. And right off the bat, I am going to have to take out the 3rd slot as well. All right, now with the 3rd slot open, let's go ahead and reapply. All right, and then you should kind of feel it going in, and then once you have it partially in, just go ahead and apply pressure, and you're gonna hear a nice little click. With that click, we have it basically installed on the motherboard, and now we have to just tighten it up. If I get it here a little bit closer here, you'll see the GPU has this little metal plate here, and we're just gonna use the existing screws that we just took out. It's gonna take 2 of these to make sure we have it secured on the case. Now, it definitely helps having different types of screwdrivers here because some of these might be very hard to access. I'm not gonna tighten the screws yet, because I also want to make sure that it's leveled as well. So it helps using one of these little levelers here, and it looks like it's perfectly leveled anyways. All right, now that the part is mounted horizontally, all we have to really do is connect this part right over here. Now, there's a whole bunch of ways to connect this streamer cable. I just opted to have it more like this so that the RGB kind of flows from this side. You could also run the streamer cable from the bottom as well and kind of have it like loop over here. I've seen a lot of people do it that way. It's just a matter of personal preference, and you could always readjust it later on if you want to. Okay, make sure you push that in nice and tight. And if it's sticking out a little bit too much, then we have to pull the streamer cable from the other side of the case. All right, just like that. And since this case is nice and wide, we definitely still have space even if we put the glass panel here. So, and this is basically how it looks like when it's closed here. The clip portion of the streamer cable is gonna probably touch the glass itself, but you don't have to worry about that because the cable is still nice and secured. And you can see from this side, it still has a good amount of clearance as well. And that's basically how the graphics card looks like horizontally. My personal preference is they're going to be vertically mounted. I think it was going to look a lot better. All right, now that we know how that horizontal mount looks like, if you ever wanted to remove the GPU on this motherboard, I have a quick release latch button here. So all I really have to do is click this button here and it should come out very easily. Now we're going to install the vertical mount. All right, so here is the vertical mount here in the black color. It looks really nice and solid. It really has this PCIe riser cable that connects to this portion over here, and it's what allows the graphic cards to sit vertically on here. Now, in order to install this first, we already installed the support bracket here, which I recommend to install this before you put the bottom fans, because otherwise you have to remove this to put the support beam. And that's going to be only for H9 cases. And the next step here is to actually mount the GPU on the actual vertical mount first. So what we're going to do is basically we're just going to slide it in place. And then we're just going to click it in. All right. Next thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to remove this little piece here. This is what's going to attach to the support beam itself. I'm going to move this to the side for now. I'm going to give you a top view here. So once we have it connected, we're just going to secure it with 2 screws right over here. All right, now we have the GPU nice and secured on the actual bracket. All right, next thing we're going to do is we're going to remove this cover here for the riser, and we're basically going to start pushing it in. Just keep in mind you have the support beam here as well, so we want to make sure we start slowly positioning it, and make sure you remove all of these little slots here, which I already did. This is pretty flexible, so you want to first connect the riser in first. Make sure that has a nice solid connection. Now that we have a nice solid connection, we can start slowly moving this inward. Now from here, you have it nice and pushed. Now to better assist you, I'm going to lay the case down so that way gravity will basically assist me to make sure I put the last 2 screws here. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. All right, and at this angle here, I have a better way to show you guys exactly what we're doing here. So keep in mind that the AIO tubes on the back here is going to be a little bit tight here, so just maneuver the tubes so that it can fall into place better. Push this inward a little bit and you're going to see 2 screw holes on the left side, so one on the bottom here and then one on top. These screws, you can use the one that's that you took off from the PCIe slots, and then the last screw. Now that we have that nice and secured to the PC case, the final step is to install this knob that we just took out from the bottom support beam. You'll notice that it sits between the support beam and this knob here, so that's going to provide extra stability. All right, and already looks so much better vertically mounted in my opinion. I mean, let me know in the comment section below if you guys prefer it horizontally. The last step here is to connect this strimmer cable right on top of here. Once again, depending on the layout of how you move the cables here, I'm going to move this up a little bit higher. All right, so now that I have the top strimmer cable connected, I can kind of play with how I want these strimmer cables to look. I might want to remove the motherboard cable and feed it underneath the AIO tubes and have this over the AIO tube. So I'm going to see how that looks real quick. All right, so I basically moved the motherboard cable underneath, and now the AIO tubes are kind of on top of this strimmer here, and I think that gives me more room and more play, so I can kind of move this in a little bit more securely. Right now I have that set up here. I think I like the setup a little bit better, and again, just play with however you want to do it. Of course, you can have the strimmer cable running underneath and kind of over looping here. I just personally like the graphics card to be fully shown in this example, so let me go ahead and show you how this looks like so far. And as you can see here, the one for the GPU is going to loop over here. Now what I did notice is that the one on mine, the GPU cable has less RGB versus this one. This one has even more. I want to say this has 24 pins. You can kind of tell. I didn't even notice that. I just noticed that right now. So Maybe that's why I was struggling a little bit more with this. But so far, I am liking the way this looks so far. I think having the AIO tubes kind of more freely, it's a lot better that way. I can basically move this more up here if I wanted to. Tuck this in underneath. All right, that way it still looks really good. You would still be able to see the RGB from the RAM. You'll be able to see the strimmer fully, and then on this side you'll still be able to see the motherboard light up as well. So we'll see how everything is going to look once we turn it on. But other than that, we pretty much have everything connected and we're ready to fire this thing up. So let's go ahead and close everything up. First thing I want to put is the back panel here. And again, let's open up this tray here and see what our cable management looks like. It's not the prettiest, but I think I did a pretty decent job here. We still have a whole ton of space on this side over here. You could definitely spend more time managing it, but to be very honest, this tray that closes magnetically makes it so simple and kind of hides the majority of it. I'm gonna grab the back panel here. Just gonna line it up again. All right, and then we just snap these top portions in place, and then we're gonna screw this portion in. Got the back panel secured. Next thing we're gonna do is the top panel. Goes right on top. Top panel is very easy to put on. And then last up here is to take the front glass panel. Apply pressure on the top. Okay, I'm gonna turn this light off here. Now we have everything put on. I'm going to start peeling this off here. Do I want to plug it in first, turn it on, and then peel it off? Or peel it off first and turn it on? I think I'm going to power it on first and then peel it off. All right guys, moment of truth here. The power connected on the back and we have a little glow right over there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to power it on the top of the case here and see how it goes. And we have power. Let's go ahead and remove the plastic piece here. Absolutely beautiful. And then we have the top piece here. All right, next we're gonna peel off the front glass here. This little triangle here, little caution, handle with care. I'm gonna remove that too. Damn, this thing looks fire already. Last thing is gonna be the top one, which I'll give you a bird's eye. All right, here's the top of the panel. Let's go ahead and take this out here. All right, absolutely beautiful. And you can see that I opted to put the fans on top so that when you see it from the top, you see these beautiful RGBs on top. Again, it's personal preference. You can just have the radiator on top. You'll just see a black radiator. At that point, I probably would just recommend getting the H9 Flow at that point. I mean, again, that's my opinion here. Now let's go ahead and change the RGB colors here and see how everything else looks. All right, dim the lights here, and I also made some changes to the RGB color. For starters, I just went with a very basic white and red scheme. You can program the SL Infinity lights individually. From the inside, you can have it one color, and the other RGB on the outside, you can have it set to a different color as well. So you'll see red tones with white, which looks absolutely beautiful. And I also sync the motherboard lighting for the RGB RAM, the logo for the motherboard, and the RGB from the 4070, all going to be red. Just play around with the colors here, but let's go ahead and see a closer look here. So you can see the beautiful infinity mirrors on the bottom here. It looks so freaking good. You have the 4070 Super vertically mounted, and I think it looks so good too. And what I love about this case here is that this is all glass, but you'll notice that over here in between the glass panel, there's like a pretty much like an opening. It's not 100% sealed, which probably could help with airflow. And then again, we have the top fans showing that beautiful RGB color as well. So running down how this exhaust works is the top fans are set to exhaust. So if I place my hand right on top of here, I do feel air coming out. And you also have all these ventilations in the back as well. Let's not forget about that. The side fans here are going to be also set to intake, and these are going to be the reverse blades. The bottom are also set to intake, so these are intaking cold air. So bottom, side are intaking cold air. Top and the back are exhausting hot air. So you have some good flow from the back here as well. So let me know what you guys think of this NZXT H9 build here. This is my first step-by-step guide on how to do this build. I really want to give a huge thanks to each and one of you guys that stick to the end of this video. I really appreciate it. Again, I'm not sure how long this video is going to be. I'm pretty sure it's going to be my longest video, and if you again watch to the end, I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me, and you're going to be seeing this PC a lot when I'm doing more monitor reviews, because I'm going to set this up on the right side over here. So I have basically this whole kind of station to do more monitor reviews, and then my main PC is going to be on the corner there, powering my, I guess main setup right over there as well. So I'm always going to be able to be more effective. That's the whole purpose of having this PC case here. Now all of these components I have purchased myself. None of these were gifted at all, and none of these were sponsored either, but I will have affiliate links with all of these products listed down in the description box below. And if you guys utilize any of these links, it does help and support my YouTube channel, and I really appreciate it if you do. It's totally fine if you don't. That's totally fine. Just you guys watching alone, liking, subscribing, and sharing it means a lot to me, guys. Hopefully you guys enjoy this build, and now I'm going to roll some B-roll so you guys can enjoy the beautiful aesthetics.